Hi guys, my name is Abby. If you don't know me, I am a student. I release music and I read a lot, and that's pretty much all there is to it. So today I wanted to share all of the books that I have read this year and rank them from the worst to the best. It's June, so we're halfway through the year, and I've been reading so much this year and I have so many more books to read. So yeah, I'm just really excited. It is very sunny today. Randomly, it was a lot less sunny earlier, but so if the sun looks like it's in my eyes, that's because it is. Okay, the first book that I'm going to be talking about today was my worst book of the year so far, and that is The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith. So this story is very, very dark. It is about a girl who suffered SA, and it's supposed to be a story about like how trauma affects you like years after something happens, and it affected her all throughout her high school experience. And so I will say there are some redeeming qualities to this book. One, it does have some really good quotes. I also think that books like these are important because like women's stories are important and it's good for us to talk about them. However, I do think that this writing was absolutely deplorable. This writing, so bad. It was good enough to finish, but I would not continue with any books by this author, to be honest, and I would definitely not recommend it. That's our first one. I gave it 2 stars. Okay, the next book I'm going to talk about is something I read for my Critical Approaches to Literature class, which is a lot of these books that I'm going to be talking about, but it was In Our Time by Ernest Hemingway, which is a collection of short stories. I will just say the writing is very clinical and very depressive, and the way I like my writing in books is very like emotive, and he just doesn't write like that. I just didn't feel connected to anything. I will say a short story that I did like from it was Soldier's Home. I would recommend that one. I did have a lot of good class discussions about this book, but I just do not ever want to read about water buckling and bullfighting again. So yeah, the next book is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. So I've seen this book recommended for years, and I eventually found it on my TBR, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to read this. And it was truly written terribly. I think we're finding a theme that I just like good writing. However, I read this in 2 days. I devoured this book. It was just the weirdest phenomenon. Like, I literally could not put it down. I did love Jax, and I was like kicking my feet a little bit. It's like a fantasy romance. It's YA. It's definitely on the younger side of YA. I don't even feel like describing the summary. It was like, I saw a term like lobotomy literature. That is this book. However, my brother got me the second book for my birthday, which I will be reading soon. So I don't know. I gave it 3 stars. Next book on my ranking, I will say, is No Exit by I actually don't know. It's a play. It's a play called No Exit. It's all about the existentialist saying hell is other people, and it's basically these like very rich people, and they like die and they're in hell, and they basically torture each other, and it's definitely, I did find this play very entertaining. I read it for theater, and it's just really a critique on how like on rich people and how even in death they still have prejudices against one another. So yeah, I liked it. So the next book I read was my first Agatha Christie book. I got this from a Goodwill with my like friend like years ago, and I saw it on my shelf and I was like, oh my gosh, I should read this. It's about 10 people who have gotten away with murder because of the way that our society is like set up, and they were hand-picked, selected to be put on Soldier Island. They're put on this island to die, and their deaths to strictly follow this nursery rhyme. The story is about justice, so it's a really great premise. I really, really enjoyed it. The killer got me. It got me. I mean, I was trying to solve it as I was reading it, like any mystery, but I really don't think I could have ever guessed. I gave it 3.5. Oh yeah, another book that I read for class. This is a nonfiction called My Life, Impressions of an Indian Childhood in like the school days. I found on like Storygraph like a merge of the two stories because it was kind of formatted to be a book, so I included it. Basically this is a story about assimilation and how Christianity can sometimes be used as a device to control. It's a story about how Indigenous children were taken to schools and outside of their families and cultures. So obviously this again opened up a lot of informative class discussions, and I'm really glad that I read it. Next, I read this special edition of Shadow and Bone. So Shadow and Bone actually really got me into reading, and like especially fantasy, because of how much I loved it. But I decided this winter that I was going to reread it because I have a special edition that I had never read, and it's just beautiful. I enjoyed it, not as much as the first time obviously because I was in 8th grade, but I will just say that this made me fall in love with Alina and the Darkling again. It just reinstilled my love for Alina. And yeah. Okay, next I read an annotated Sage and Storm. I saw someone say that this book is peak Alina stand up and then peak again, and that's like the best way I can describe it. I will say this series just has a lot of sentimental value to me, so I'm very biased. I read, this counts as another book. I had never read The Tailor, which is a short story about Genya, or novella, at the end of Sage and Storm, and I did read that for the first time, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. All right, so now we're getting to just books that I absolutely loved and adored. Okay, this book is My Antonia by Willa Cather. I had to read this for class, and I'm so glad I did. We had to write an essay about something about this book, and I wrote about this book's relationship with memory and grief. I think that this book was so incredibly beautifully written. Like, I genuinely think the best descriptions and depictions of love I've ever read were in this book. Like the confessions, like the love of the land, just absolutely amazing. This book is about the American frontier. It's about immigrant life. It's following this Bohemian family at the beginning, and then specifically the daughter, Antonia, and her relationship with Jim. And it's really just about Jim's love for her. I also thought that we got a little bit of a background about the author Willa Cather, and some of the thoughts that we talked about during our discussion was that we feel like she was writing her own love for women through Jim's character because of how much Jim admires and adores Antonia, which I thought that was just such a beautiful thing. So I gave this 4 stars. Amazing. Next on my ranking is Catching Fire. So I have never read The Hunger Games until this point in my life. I know, disappointing. I had forgotten the movies, so reliving it for the first time again just felt so entertaining. This book, I could really feel the rebellion in the book. I also think the whole force field plot was so well built up, and I loved Katniss and Peeta's love story and their sweet little moments in this book, and I also feel like I felt them a lot more than in the movies. But I borrowed this from my best friend Chloe, and it was just so good. All right, okay, I finished the Stolen Heir duology. So this is following the Folk of the Air trilogy, which is like The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King. That is my favorite fantasy series, and I got this duology in like Christmas 2024 and it was a gift, and I had just gotten the courage to read it because I was just so sad that it was going to be over, and then she announced another Elfane book, so I'm good now. This book completed the duology. It's following Ren and Oak. I will say I don't really like how the Stolen Heir is all Ren's point of view and this is all Oak's point of view, because I felt kind of robbed of Ren's point of view. Like I missed her, like I missed doing what she was thinking. However, I did love Jude in this book, and I loved how it felt like another Cruel Prince book. Like, I'm not complaining. And it also explored a little bit of like generational trauma and realizing that you're more like your family than you thought you were, and vice versa. So I really thought it was so entertaining and well done. Okay, next on my ranking is a manga. I know. I am famously known for like not liking anime or not watching anime or not engaging in it. But my friend Riley, she recommended me Frieren, and it fixed me. It genuinely fixed me. It's basically about an elf Frieren, and she goes on like a 10-year adventure. This is a story about how like the ones we've lost still affect us when they're gone, and how like malleable people are. And I literally think it's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful story. It's a haunting the narrative trope, which is my favorite trope. I adored the show and this manga so much. Okay, next on my ranking is Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. So I have now officially read 3 Sally Rooney books out of her 4. And I absolutely love this. I cannot believe it's so underrated. I annotated it, as you can see. This basically follows Alice and Eileen writing emails to one another, but also following their individual lives. And like, it's kind of a romance because it's their relationships with these guys that they're seeing. This opened up a lot of great conversations in my life, like about Marxism, having constant dread of the state of the world, and also being so involved in our own relationships. I genuinely think this book is so brilliantly done. There was a really nuanced take on Christianity, which I thought was so like natural and interesting to read about, and just like exploring existential ideas, I guess. I will read you a quote actually from this one. What if the meaning of life on earth is not eternal progress towards some unspecified goal, the development of more and more complex and abstruse cultural forms? What if these things just rise and recede naturally like tides, while the meaning of life remains the same always, just to live and be with other people? Okay, now, a play for class, and I also did my final essay on this, The Children's Hour by Lillian Hellman. This is the original 1934 play, and I literally was blown away. This play was so ahead of its time. And I remember I called it to my professor. I was like, this is the homework of doom and despair. So yeah, this is about Martha and Karen. They're 2 teachers. They've built a life for themselves, and a child accuses them of one being in love with the other. So, and then that causes their entire life to kind of detonate like a bomb. And my essay was basically about like the danger of suppressing queer women. They're discriminated against because not only are they supposedly queer women, they're also women, and they're also punished for not conforming to the role of this like heteronormative society. It was so good. I would definitely recommend this. Alright, the next book on my ranking is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This follows basically a circus, and that's all you need to know. Okay, there's a competition, there's a romance subplot, and it's a circus. And it's some of the best writing I've ever read in my life. This book is full of tension, but also nothing. Nothing happens. It's very slow, but I loved it. So if you want to read about beautiful descriptions of clocks, this is your guy. If you want a high, fast-paced plot and character-driven story, this is not your guy. But I've also never visualized a book so well in my life. And this book was so visceral, and I think about it still, like months and months after I read it. This is a really beautiful story, and some things do happen, and there's like heartbreaking quotes, and I would recommend just reading this with some hot chocolate when you're in the mood for it. So give it 4.75. Alright, we're officially under our 2 5-stars of the year so far. So this is Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series that I have been reading since I was in high school. My old English teacher, Miss Bell, would be very proud of me for going back to this series, because she would lend me these books, and like I would rant about them with her. This, I give it 5 stars. It made me cry 3 times, and I rarely cry at books. There's just so many like pivotal scenes in this book that like made the whole series like more amazing in my head than it already was. Also, I don't know what is it with fantasy authors writing devastating father-daughter dynamics, but I eat it up every time. So this book definitely does that. There's definitely romance, there's high fantasy, dragons. There's like a crossover scene. It's so good and definitely worth it. And like the way Sam haunts the narrative, I was bawling. It's so good. All right, and the last book is All's Well by Mona Awad. Mona Awad will probably always be at the top of my ranking for anything because I literally just think she's a genius and I would read literally anything she's written ever. I did a whole book review on this book, so if you want to hear my more in-depth thoughts, I would go watch that. But this book is so feminist. It's so like justifying. It's about female rage. It's so beautiful. The writing is so immersive. 5 stars. And that's all I really got to say about it. And yeah, that's all the books that I've read this year. Thank you so much if you watched all of that. And I will definitely do another one of these in December at the end of the year. But yeah, this is the mid-year wrap-up dash ranking. And yeah, have a great day wherever you are, or night. Okay, bye.